AC, wouldn't you know it, we finally, after half a decade, make our way completely clear of Hammerland, and on the way to freedom, we run into a castle, and now we're stuck here.
What? A castle?
I From everything I know, it's going to be a long time before we get out of this place, so we might as well settle in and enjoy it and become castle freaks. Yes, ladies and gentlemen, our brand new series debuts now. Castle Freaks, we are going to be looking at the horrific and horrifically entertaining world of William Castle, a filmmaker who I think wrongfully was known mostly as a gimmick filmmaker. He was a journeyman director, worked for Columbia Pictures back in the 1950s, found his niche, his home, making thriller pictures and kind of ghostly monster movies, primarily targeted at younger audiences, but they became box office sensations nonetheless. And we're going to start off with one of his most well-known films, 1959's House on Haunted Hill, starring Vincent Price. AC, in the last month or so since we decided to go ahead with this show, I've become a not a William Castle aficionado, but definitely a fan. I've read this amazing autobiography called William Castle Step Right Up. I'm gonna scare the pants off America, and also a sort of companion piece documentary, although not officially, called Spine-Tingler, The William Castle Story, which came out in 2007. Both great. Both have some sort of overlapping information, but fill in some of the blanks between the two media, which is very entertaining. So I'm very excited. I'm so excited. I ordered a fake gag cigar.
I saw you with the cigar backstage. I'm like, what is happening right now?
Very clearly, because smoking is bad for you, but William Castle is always the guy with the big cigar in his mouth. This is not nearly as impressive as some of the stogies he was nursing, but I'll take it. AC, tell me about William Castle and your experience with his films. We'll get into House on Haunted Hill in a bit, but I want to kind of set the table here.
Well, I gotta say, I'm very excited at how deep you've dived already into the world of William Castle, because prior to, I think, this past month or so, you had not seen any William Castle and weren't really that familiar with his work.
I think you had pointed out that we might have talked about one of the films that he produced during our Hammer series.
Yes, well, he also directed. That's true. He did direct The Old Dark House,
right,
for Hammer. And so, yes, we kind of incidentally, I think that's maybe how I found out that you hadn't seen any other William Castle. It's like, well, this is William Castle, but it's not William Castle.
Right. And I think my only other kind of I've heard the name before, of course, and the Music Box here in Chicago does a revival, I don't know if it's an annual thing yet, but they do it every once in a while where they install the Tingler devices in the theater seats when they screen the Tingler. But my main familiarity with him was as the inspiration for John Goodman's character Lawrence Woolsey in Joe Dante's Matinee, which is fantastic. And now I've seen that movie a couple of times, but now having boned up on William Castle, I can totally see it. I actually want to go back and watch that movie again.
As do I, actually. Maybe we should slot that in as something we talk about on the show, or at least incidentally, maybe not dedicate an entire episode to it, but it's certainly a movie that I have great affection for as well. And so my exposure to William Castle was, I had heard about him as someone who was a contemporary of Hitchcock and oftentimes seen as a Hitchcock pretender. What's interesting is that, yes, there's no doubt that William Castle was inspired by the success of Psycho, but his films do predate Psycho. Both The Tingler and House on Haunted Hill were 1959. His film Macabre was 1958. So it wasn't just that he saw Hitchcock's success and said, I'll do that too. But I would say that he certainly was inspired, and I would say inspired to compete with. Hitchcock had become very much a face of his movies. Like, people knew Alfred Hitchcock from his show, Alfred Hitchcock Presents, and all of his, little cameos that he would do in his movies. So that's why William Castle made a point of putting himself, it's William Castle Presents, these various movies. He was as big a star as the movies and the people who were in his movies. And he would do, much like the movie Matinee, he would travel around and do these kind of road shows and do these big gimmicks and just make a big production. Ballyhoo is a term that is often connected with William Castle, so much so that I forget the gentleman's name. It's Daniel something, but he produces a lot of these DVD extras, and his production company is called Ballyhoo Productions. You can see Emergo the skeleton as kind of the logo that he uses. So yes, making a big production. I mean, showbiz was really, what William Castle was known for, and making a show of every single movie that he did.
And we'll talk a bit more about the Hitchcock Castle kind of, not exactly rivalry, because they had met each other in some capacity, because I know there's
Sure.
a couple of stills of them, post photographs. But it was fascinating to me watching Spine-Tingler to learn that Hitchcock might have been inspired a bit by William Castle, because there's that famous Psycho ad campaign, promotional campaign outside the theaters. There'd be a giant clock, I believe. It would say nobody is admitted into Psycho after the movie starts,
Right.
and that to preserve the surprises. And there's even a sort of a standee outside of Hitchcock pointing to his own text, saying, once you've seen the movie, don't spoil the ending for everybody. So yeah, and this is one of the things that I really hope to drive home in this series is talking about the enthusiasm not only of the fans for these movies, which some people might consider, 50 B movie schlock, but the enthusiasm on the part of the filmmaker to turn the movies into an event that you had to go to with friends and see things that you could never expect to see, that might sound ridiculous, but they kind of create a wild party atmosphere. And maybe see if there's a chance that we could get some of that back. I don't know if we're too far gone as a film culture, but it sure would be fun.
Well, you spoke a little bit about like how Castle is referred to as the gimmick king, and I think that is what you're referring to, is that his movies, they weren't just the movies on the screen. Like when you saw a William Castle movie in the theater, there was usually something surrounding that as well. I know we're not going to talk about Macabre, so I mean that was one of his first films that he introduced the Lloyd's of London insurance policy for anyone who died of fright watching Macabre. And so people would, of course, go in and see if they were going to get scared to death. And it made it a fun night. And I think what you're talking about, these being like kiddie films, they were fun. They were fun horror films. So you had ghosts and murderers and axe killers and, all sorts of supernatural and goofy things, but there was a sense of genuine entertainment attached to them.
Yeah, and I don't know if it was on Homicidal, but it might have been. One of his films, he offered a full refund. Like the movie would pause right before the end of it, and basically the announcement would be, if you are, yeah, fright break. If you are too scared to finish this movie, go to the box office and get your refund. And there's a whole kind of mythology behind that. But during one of these movie events, they would have the cowards corner for people who are too afraid to go on, and it would be painted yellow, just making it into a whole big event. And none of these movies, I don't think even for the time, were so traumatic as to be, you'd need to take a break or get your money back. But it was all in the showmanship. And speaking of which, I think that kind of brings us to House on Haunted Hill, with the inimitable, irreplaceable, even though they tried to do it in 1999 with Jeffrey Rush, which we'll talk about in a little bit. Yes. Vincent Price plays a wealthy. Yep, there you go. You got the T-shirt and everything.
I have my T-shirt, my Vincent Price T-shirt.
Vincent Price plays Frederick Lauren, who's married to Carol Omart's Annabelle Lauren, and they live in this big haunted house on a hill, or a house on a haunted hill, and they really don't like each other. And they throw a party in honor of her birthday, and they invite a number of guests to spend the night. And this is such a William Castle thing, whoever survives the night gets $10,000 in a check made out to cash. Problem is, the house is rumored to be haunted, and all sorts of mysterious and unfortunate things have occurred there over the years. One of the people who is an attendee is Watson Pritchard, and he has a history with the house. His brother actually died there, and he had spent a night in there at some point. And when they found him in the next morning, he was barely alive, and yet he's somehow come back for this $10,000. It's a question as to whether or not there are ghosts in the house, or if the Laurens are putting on a show for the benefit of their guests and or to cover up one of them murdering each other. It's a very twisty, kind of involved suspense. I'm not going to call it a drama. It's more of a thriller. But I was surprised because this is my first bona fide William Castle horror movie experience at how bloodless it was. It was a lot of people walking down hallways and talking in rooms. It does end on a spectacular kind of note, but is it okay to say I was a little bit let down?
I think it's okay to say that. I mean, your expectations might have been a little elevated as well, but I think that's why the gimmicks are what tend to overshadow some of Castle's films. But this film in particular, House on Haunted Hill, shows up on a lot of these public domain box sets. It also, because it fell into the public domain, it shows up on everybody's YouTube channel or their late night cable access, whatever. Like, this is one of those movies that gets played a lot because it's in the public domain. And Vincent Price, he was just becoming a horror star. This was one of the films that this and The Tingler, which both came out in 1959, are the films that kind of made him a horror star. He'd done House of Wax in 1953. He just started doing things like The Fly and Return of the Fly, which also was 1959. So he was just starting to become the Vincent Price that we know and love, the Crown Prince of Horror. But this is one of those movies that was key to him becoming that household name for people.
It's really strange because, well, first of all, it's strange because this is just a bit of meta context. This is the second movie from 1959 that we've discussed on the show this week. The first being,
right?
Yeah, the first being Ben-Hur by William Wyler.
Yes. Well, they're almost the same movie, really.
Yeah, titans in their field. It's strange because House on Haunted Hill is a black and white film, which I mistakenly, and this is a lesson to everybody who might be trying to check this film out on a streaming service. I checked it out through Hoopla, which is a local library app. I pressed play and I was like, why does this movie look so fuzzy and why is the color palette brown? And I realized this looks like a colorized version of the film. So I checked around. I was able to find through one of the other actual streaming services, a black and white version, and it's nice and crisp and pristine and beautiful black and white, no mud. A black and white movie that came out 6 years after House of Wax and just a little bit after The Fly. This feels like the movie that would have come before those and led to those more spectacular, not even just in terms of being in color, but just more over the top in their concepts, their production design, the makeups and everything. It's a bit of a weird trip because we saw House of Wax together a few years ago at the famous Music Box Theater, and that was a hell of an experience. So for this to be a sort of a giant leap forward in Vincent Price's career, it's odd for me watching this contemporarily and not, back in the 1950s to see what I consider to be an artistic almost step back.
Well, we get to see Vincent Price along, kind of embracing that House of Wax joyous villain, right? We get to see him like really enjoying and being mischievous as Frederick Lauren, who has invited these people here to enjoy, a macabre evening of fun. I mean, the thing is, I have such affection for this movie now. I can understand you not grabbing you. Certainly, if expectations were elevated, but it is a movie that I really enjoy, and it's short. It's only 75 minutes, so for me, it clips right along. I also feel like this just you're introduced to characters. Like you meet everybody, and I love the way he does that, kind of like the rolling introduction of the hearses coming up to the house on Haunted Hill, and so I mean, and then once we get into it, it just feels like we're constantly going around corners, and hands are reaching around corners, and people are being handed, handguns for their protection
in the little coffins. Yeah,
little coffins. So I mean, there's just so much fun going on that I can't find myself bored.
I don't know that I was bored. I just noticed a lot of repetition.
Sure.
Like people, like, again, walking down hallways, but walking down hallways. I don't know. I think I have a feeling that this is a film that I'm going to come back to, and I'll appreciate probably more in a second viewing because I know what I'm in for.
Sure.
I also think it's an odd case of having seen the 1999 remake when it came out.
Oh, okay.
Not having had any context for the original House on Haunted Hill, and just expecting an actual ghost story. Because this movie is clearly not a ghost story. That movie clearly is. And I think that has a lot of the kind of the castle spirit, bring everything from the castle oeuvre into a late 90s, bloody horror remake with special effects by K&B. Whereas this, I'm trying not to fault it for being from a simpler time and not being the story that I'd expected. So it's not fair for me to lodge these complaints, but it's just I had to recalibrate.
But on first watch, did you
later.
realize that it wasn't a ghost story? I mean, I feel like we eventually learn that it's not a ghost story, but I think as we go along, we don't know quite what it is.
I picked up on it probably in the middle, maybe, because there's the famous bit where the lady is in her room and she encounters the ghostly hag with the screaming and the crazy eyes and everything.
Yep.
And then a few minutes later, after she's run back into the drawing room, Vincent Price reveals, "Oh, that's not a ghost. That's one of the two house servants." I'm like, "Oh, this is what we're doing."
Yes.
Yeah.
But then you have Annabelle, hanging, mysteriously. You have ropes that come in and entwine themselves around our young heroine's feet. So we have a few things that feel supernatural, at least on the face of them.
Now that's a good question, or a good point, because I'd forgotten about the rope wrapping around her foot.
And don't ask how that happened, because that's
but this is what I'm getting at. Is it possible the house is haunted, and those things, those incidents that Pritchard had talked about with his brother and the things that he had experienced,
right?
Is it possible they did spend a night at a haunted house and all these people died, and then it just happens that the Laurens bought the house and moved into it, and its ghosts were feeding off that evil and helping to facilitate their plan because it knew that it might help them get some more souls?
That is certainly what the screenwriter of the 1999 remake was thinking. Was that, yeah, hey, you know what? Let's see, what would it be like if there were actual ghosts? And I mean, I think Pritchard certainly thinks that there's ghosts there, and there are some things that are inexplicable. So, I think it could be a little bit of both. I think also Castle's not interested in logic. He's interested in giving you a good time.
I totally would buy the idea of him filming that rope scene of the rope snaking along the girl, and later someone pointing out, "Wait a second, this isn't a haunted house movie, Bill." And he's like, "But I filmed it. It looks great."
Yeah, it does look great, right? And he's all about misdirection. Like that is what he's doing, is giving us what feels like a ghost story. And then when it's revealed that it isn't, you're kind of like, well, wait a minute. How did you do all those ghost effects then?
Well, I do like the kind of climactic reveal, because it is revealed that Annabelle is not in fact dead. She did not hang herself. She's in cahoots with one of the other guests of the house who are trying to, take Mr. Lauren's fortune from him. Doesn't end up so well for them because there's a giant vat of acid in the basement that is uncovered. Not that it's uncovered as in being revealed. It is just sitting there
It's just there.
uncovered.
Yep, exactly.
And yeah, people fall into it. And at one point, Annabelle thinks that she has shot Frederick, her devious husband. He has fallen into the acid.
Well,
And
just a
right,
correction. We don't think that Annabelle doesn't think. Annabelle does believe that he's been shot, because that is what they're setting it up to do, is that our lovely little heroine, who's wonderfully mousy and screams really well, Carolyn Craig, that she has been set up to think that
that's right,
Frederick is trying to kill
as
her.
an alibi. Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so she's orchestrating it so that Carolyn Craig's character shoots Frederick.
Right. And then Annabelle believes, or Frederick falls in. Okay. I need your help on this one. He falls into the acid.
Well, does he fall into the acid? We hear a splash.
We hear a splash. But what was he splashing into? If not, like, did he have a separate?
Well, no, because the doctor, right, is down there at the same time that Frederick is down there. So the splash we hear is the doctor.
Ah, okay. Because is that when the blackout happened?
Yep.
Yeah, it's been a long couple of days, and I've watched both this and the remake, so I'm a little bit fuzzy.
Yeah.
Okay, that makes sense, because it is a weird cut when the lights go out and then it moves on to elsewhere in the house. Like, wait, what happened?
Right.
And that's meant for us to be a little bit confused as to what happened, to set up this great kind of double back.
Yep.
So Annabelle goes down there and she sees the husband, or the skeleton of her husband, rising up from the acid and kind of taunting her. And she freaks out and she gets backed into the acid and falls in, and she actually dissolves.
Right.
Down there with her Mr. S. What happens next? Frederick emerges from the shadows with this giant marionette contraption that is this guiding the skeleton that backed his wife into the grave. And at this point, you mentioned Emergo or Emergo. It's a little bit uncertain as to how people pronounce it differently, but Emergo, because it's Emerge was the gimmick that William Castle used in theaters, so that when the skeleton rose up out of the acid, a giant plastic skeleton, would drop from the ceiling and kind of zip line over the heads of the audience and terrify them to death. Allegedly.
Or it was slow and silly and people tried to throw popcorn boxes at it. And I mean, and you talked about the music box. When people do revive this film in a theater, Emergo is a big part of it. And I've seen several different versions of an Emergo, and they're all just delightful because there's a certain DIY quality to it. I think back in the day, it was like an inflatable skeleton that, like moved very slowly over the heads of the audience. But again, it just added to the fun. It added to the sense of like, well, you don't want to tell anybody about this because you want the surprise to remain intact for them as well.
I hope to see an Emergo screening someday. I hope to see a Tingler screening, but I dare say no gimmick is going to outdo. Again, we're just shilling for the music box all over tonight.
Right.
I went to see a midnight screening of Tommy Wiseau's The Room about probably 10, 12 years ago. And there's a running joke in that movie, or a sight gag, of framed pictures of spoons. And the audience brought plastic spoons. And whenever a spoon would show up on screen, which was a lot, it was like Lord of the Rings, The Two Towers, just legions of spoons flying over your head at the screen, just shot like arrows. I don't know. I don't envy whoever had to clean that mess up, but it was immersive. It was fun. It was nuts, which is the spirit of William Castle.
That is right. Now, and I think that is, the joy of seeing a William Castle movie with a theater full of when we talk about the Tingler, that's very much key to, because there's a scene that takes place inside of a theater. And so being in a theater, watching something that's taking place inside of a theater is really just kind of super meta fun.
And we'll revisit our friend Joe Dante and what he did with Gremlins 2 as, I think, an homage to the Tingler.
Yep.
But I gotta ask, because we've mentioned the kind of like the party event and the silliness of seeing this in the big screen. Um, House on Haunted Hill, I don't feel like lends itself to that just as a movie. I
Hmm,
mean, the Emergo gimmick is something that happens at the end. I mean, the picture's almost over, but
right,
this is not the kind of film that is cheesy 1950s or what people kind of think of in movies like Joe Dante's Explorer or
right.
Joe Dante's Matinee, where they have the movie within a movie and it's, really bad over the top acting and terrible special effects. This is a legit
Yeah.
haunted house crime movie. So, in your experience having seen this, are people laughing along? Are they expecting it's going to be terrible? Or are they kind of like taking it seriously?
Well, I think there is a sense of melodrama to it. There's a heightened sense of all of it. The characters are, pretty thin. So I think you can laugh at the movie should you so choose. I think that also Castle knew what he was doing. He knew that he was presenting a melodrama that had, your square-jawed hero and your screaming heroine and your devious villain and his equally devious wife. I think we were expecting this to be kind of heightened. And so I think there's kind of a delight in watching that happen. I don't think it's meant to be played realistically. However, I do think that everybody plays it straight, and I don't think that the acting is terrible. I think everybody's quite competent in telling, embodying their characters. So yeah, I mean, it is certainly of an age, and so
Yeah.
I could see how people might, get a kick out of it for perhaps the quote unquote wrong reason.
Yeah, I almost think there should be like a pre-screening or something because I could see someone going there like half drunk at midnight, just never having seen the film and assuming it's going to be awful,
Right.
but not assuming it's going to be, like you say, heightened reality kind of thriller. Because it's a fine distinction, but there is a distinction there. I mean, Nora Manning as Carolyn, she has a scene where she's yelling at people to get out of her room. That if ever there was an example of the stereotypical hysterical woman archetype, I think that would have been it. I was like, wow, I don't know if she thought that character would scream like that and throw a tantrum, or if that was Castle's doing or what, but I was embarrassed watching that moment.
I find that moment hilarious and awesome,
It's hilarious and awesome, but not not
but
for
not
anything related to the
realistic.
character, right.
Not realistic. I mean, and I think that's it. Like, I don't think it is intended to be realistic. I think it's intended to be fun. Like, we want somebody who's going to scream really well. We want somebody who's going to be our heroic guy. We want somebody who's going to be the, kind of suspicious spinster. I love our blind housekeeper, who's named Mrs. Glides, by the way, because she actually glides along like she's being pulled on a dolly. That is truly one of my favorite moments in horror, because like when they get that close up of her like making her big hag face, like that's legit scary. And then when she like cruises through the screen, I'm like, wait, what is happening right now? Like, I just find that moment, that sequence, so delightful. And I confess I probably have rewound it and watched it over and over again more times than I care to mention.
So that's the kind of movie you rewind and watch over and over again,
That's
AC.
the one. That's the
Oh.
one.
I you bring up an excellent point, maybe inadvertently. What was the deal with that character? Because we've established she's just the blind housekeeper,
That's right.
but she's also showing up in the dark. Is that something that thrills her? Is standing in dark rooms, just making fright faces with her hands out like claws, and then
William
somehow
Castle
gliding along the
doesn't
floor?
care. William Castle does not care. And I think this is the bravuro of William Castle, is that he's not interested in giving you reality. He's interested in giving you fun scares. And if it means it's illogical, he's totally fine with that. Cuz yeah, why does Mrs. Glides actually glide like that? It's nonsense. It's only because William Castle knew that would be a fun thing to watch, is somebody cruising along as though they're floating off the ground, even though she's just the blind housekeeper.
And I think that's one of the charms and even the magic, the meta magic tricks of this movie is I didn't even think about that point until we were having this conversation hours after, well, actually a day after I'd finished watching the film. It's not like, wait a second, why was she glad? No, there's so much else of going on in this movie in terms of the plotting and the kind of colorful characters, even though they are thin characters, as you
Yep.
mentioned,
Yep.
to keep you entertained. Yeah, man. I do want to talk about, like you're talking about the melodrama, the dynamic between Vincent Price and Carol Omart. I
Oh
think,
my gosh, I
per-
love the Laurens.
well, particularly in that early scene where they're talking in the bedroom, the guests are downstairs, and they're kind of snipping at each other back and forth, and all of a sudden he grabs her, the kind of the ponytail, the back of her head, and he's still like kind of smiling and grimacing and doing that Vincent Price thing, and they're constantly like the War of the Roses or something, just
Yeah.
constantly at each other's throats, almost literally. But it's such. I just would have watched a movie about their failing marriage, regardless of ghosts or $10,000 plots.
And you legit believe these two. I think War of the Roses is a great, for those who haven't seen it, but please do check out that movie. The original with Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner. I have not seen the new version, but yes, these are just two people who are married, probably should not be married, and you absolutely believe that they are trying to murder one another when the other isn't looking. I love his little comment about, remember when you tried to poison me? And I was like, it's just how droll.
Yeah, and I think she kind of played it off as that they're constantly talking about playing the plausible deniability game,
Yep.
which I think is great because they realize if they tip their hands, then it's all over. They've got grounds for divorce and and possibly much worse.
Right.
Um, so AC, I was going to ask you this earlier. When did you first encounter House on Haunted Hill?
I don't know. I want to say it was pretty early on. I feel like it was something that I saw as a kid. And then there's just such a Saturday matinee quality to it. So I can't tell you exactly when I saw it, but I have gone back to it. I want to say, at least a dozen times at this point. Most recently, Film Masters just put it out on Blu-ray, and so I reviewed it for the site earlier this year. It's one of those movies that has been a perennial favorite. I think it's one that you'll see, at a lot of like Halloween parties. It's a great thing to kind of have in the background. And anybody who watches it is going to go, oh, yes, I have seen scenes from this movie at some point, whether it be a Vincent Price retrospective or a William Cattrall retrospective, or just seeing Emergo, like backing Carol Omart around. Like this is one of those true low budget classics. And it made $1 zillion in 1959. It was a huge hit.
Now, I want to ask you about it. Film Masters, you said, put out the Blu-ray?
Yes. Well, put out a Blu-ray because, again, being in the public domain, it's a lot of people have put this movie out.
Okay, but is it a good release? I mean, is it like extras and stuff on it, or is it?
I would say yes. It's a fair. Film Masters is a company I've long championed, and I would say that this one's a little more skimpy on the extras. There's just a commentary track, which is fine, but in the past, Film Masters has done maybe one or two commentary tracks, and then they have little featurettes. I mean, the fact that they didn't do like a little featurette with C. Courtney Joyner talking about William Castle or something like that was a little surprising. So this isn't like their top bar of their Blu-ray releases, but it's a nice release. It's pretty. It says it's newly remastered. So yeah, I mean, it looks great and it sounds great, and it's just a nice new presentation.
The reason I asked is, well, I might have to pick it up because I'm determined. I gotta I have to own all the William Castle movies, even though I haven't seen them. I'm going in blind, but he did those introductions to the theatrical presentations. I assume there was one for House on Haunted Hill. I don't remember seeing it specifically in that documentary, but the documentary did show a whole bunch of his kind of intros that would play at the theater, but it wasn't attached to the version I saw.
That is correct. I do not think that he recorded one for House on Hunt Hill. I think he just was finding his style, I think, at this point. So both this one and The Tingler. But I think for the trailers, you may have seen him show up talking about it. Back if you think about Alfred Hitchcock's Psycho trailer, where he basically walks people through the house.
One of the greatest of all time, yeah.
And I think that may be something that Castle adopted, said, well, I need to get myself in front of the camera as well. I need to be talking about these people so they know it's William Castle's whatever the movie is.
Yeah, I just if there are, I'm not sure. Yeah, I don't know if those are the trailers, or my impression is that those would be things that would play like immediately in front of the movie, particularly like the insurance policy and stopping the clock and all that other stuff. So as we encounter those movies, it'd be nice to be able to actually watch those.
I believe that when he did those introductions, those are the things that are available on home video. There was a box set released not too long ago. Although everything feels like it was a short time, but it might have been even 10 years ago. Because I think the Spine-tingling documentary was included on that box set. The 2007, I think, is its festival run. I think it maybe was released on the box set, maybe like 2010, but it has pretty much a solid collection of all of them. That may be DVD. I don't know if it ever got upgraded to Blu-ray, but yeah, again, for this movie in particular, you will find lots and lots of releases out there, Blu-ray, DVD, whatever format you choose.
4K?
Sure. I'm putting one out right now.
Hey, I do want to talk briefly about, I do want to talk about the remake from 99 a bit.
Which I just revisited last night as well.
I watched it this afternoon. But before we get to that, is there anything that we didn't touch on that you really wanted to zero in on for the original 59 version?
I did talk about the fact that, this was Vincent Price's breakout, kind of 59 was his big year. I think he's so great in this. And you also have Alicia Cook Jr. as Pritchett. And Alicia Cook Jr. is somebody that any fan of classic film will recognize, because he was always that little kind of wormy faced guy who he's also in, I think, Maltese Falcon, so he's somebody who has been a classic character actor for many, many, many years. And he's terrific in this. I think everybody's really delightful in this movie. But Carol Omart is so great. She matches Vincent Price in his prime, and that is no easy feat. She is a worthy foil for him. And again, I love the Laurens. I love every single scene with them together and apart.
Was she, this is going to sound really ignorant of me because I could have looked it up and I probably should know, but what else would I have seen her in? Did she have
a movie that we talked about on this very show, Spider Baby? She shows up in that. She wanders around, and Sid Haig does her in at the end.
That was her?
That is Carol Omart.
Time to rewatch Spider Baby.
Like 10 years later and still looking amazing.
Wow.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, she is a stunning beauty in this film. I think that kind of helps to kind of explain, because I think she's supposed to be his fourth wife, and it kind of explains the attraction, but also that she's more than just a pretty face. She's a killer who just happened to get done in first.
Yep.
But let's talk briefly about 1999. House on Haunted Hill, the remake, that was the first production of Dark Castle, which is a studio that was kind of co-founded by Robert Zemeckis. And in the late 90s and early 2000s, they would do a whole bunch of movies of this type. They did a remake of 13 Ghosts, which we'll talk about, the original and the remake. They also did the House of Wax remake, Ghost Ship, which I thought had one of the most spectacular opening sequences that I've ever seen in a horror film.
Yep.
When I saw the logo Dark Castle pop up on this, I thought, is this like the next second coming of William Castle? I don't know anything about the studio and its origins.
I think
really,
that is what it was intended to be. It was intended to, again, they did 13 Ghosts. Those were their, as you said, flagship productions, because they were like, you know what? William Castle had a really great time back in the 50s and 60s, why couldn't we update those movies and give it that same sense of fun? Because I think that's what, the House on Haunted Hill 1999 is about. It is another fun horror film, just with more gore and more ghosts for sure.
1000% more ghosts, which is to say there are ghosts in it.
They're actually ghosts.
Yeah, for some reason, and it might be my William Castle bias, having done this deep dive and just watching the original House of Wax, I enjoyed the remake a lot more than when I saw it in a theater in 1999. I had a much better sense of fun with it. In fact, the only thing I didn't like was Jeffrey Rush's on the nose, ham-handed homage to Vincent Price. His character's last name is even Price. I was like,
Stephen Price, yeah.
Yeah. He's got the pencil mustache. He even kind of has that classic Vincent Price look to him. But there's just something that is irreplaceable about Vincent Price. And there's something in Jeffrey Rush's face where he looks like he's tired because he knows he's doing an impression and he's got 3 months left on this shoot. That's what I got from every scene he was in.
That's so funny. That is not what I get at all. I get that Jeffrey Rush is having a whale of a time doing his Vincent Price. That's what I got. And so again, that sense of fun came through for me because I get that, nobody can be Vincent Price, but it's awful fun to do a Vincent Price impression or a tribute. And I think that Famke Janssen, as his wife, brings that same sense of delicious, evil and husband-wife rivalry. I mean, she's just delightful. She reminds me, the fact that she was in GoldenEye and truly one of the great Bond women. I loved seeing her show up in this because I think that was just 4 years later, right? So Famke Janssen was somebody who was just starting to emerge as a Hollywood star.
Oh yeah, this is the year before X-Men came out.
There you go. Yep.
And oddly enough, the year before Final Destination came out, and this movie has Ali Larter in it.
That's
she's
right.
Playing an executive assistant, so she's clearly in her early 20s, and yet in Final Destination, a year later, she's playing a girl on her high school class trip. I understand. Anyway, I love Famke Janssen in this movie better than Jeffrey Rush. I think Jeffrey Rush does great when he gets locked in that chamber with the kind of the Nickelodeon or whatever it is spinning around that drives him insane, and then he's kind of off his rocker for the rest of the film. Oh my gosh, I'm really scared because there's actual ghosts and they're trying to kill me. I think that's the more powerful stuff. It might have been the aesthetic. I think I want to blame the filmmakers and the screenwriter for putting him in this position of being the Vincent Price stand-in instead of just being a guy who's an eccentric billionaire.
No, I think that's fair. I think, I'm not saying it wouldn't have worked better if it had if it had been its own character instead of so clearly being a Vincent Price homage.
Yeah. But I really like the kind of the mythos of this story, the old house having been an insane asylum back in the 30s. Jeffrey Combs was the evil Dr. Vandercut who was doing all sorts of crazy experiments on people, and the inmates get a hold of the asylum and start ripping everyone to shreds. And he, in his last desperate moments, he shutters the place as it catches on fire, so everyone inside burns to death, and the place becomes haunted. And 40 years later, there's an eccentric billionaire guy with his loveless wife, and they host a party. Except the twist is, this is a party that the guest list is scrapped, and new people are invited, and they're all strangers to even the hosts, not to mention themselves, because the real ghosts, sent the email invitations.
And they were all related to the doctors and nurses who were running the asylum. Is that right?
There were 5 people from the 31 fire that survived. And these are they were the people, their ghosts weren't trapped, I guess, in the asylum. So the ghosts in the asylum wanted a bit of that legacy. It's very Final Destination, kind of completing that loop. See, I really like this movie. again, it looks great. It's very creepy. This has more hauntedness than the original
Oh yeah.
film, which I feel like instead of just doing a remake, they really kind of amped it up and made it more of what I think people think of William Castle than actual William Castle.
Well, this is director William Malone, who didn't do a ton of movies, but he did a movie called Creature with Klaus Kinski in the 80s. And fans of the Masters of Horror TV show, he did an anthology episode called Fair Haired Child, which is
Mm.
actually, a pretty solid episode. But yeah, William Malone, journeyman director, and I think he does pretty well with his assignment. As you said, Robert Zemeckis and Joel Silver are our executive producers, and they were the kind of the ones who said, you know what, we got an idea here. Let's see what we can do with it.
Yeah, I mean, it's cliche to say the house is a character, but the house not only is it a character because it's crawling with ghosts, but it's such a striking visual image. I mean,
Yes.
this giant monolith shooting up into the sky like on the edge of a cliff.
In the
The
same way that like this is kind of a supercharged version of the William Castle. I feel like the house itself is also a supercharged version of that Art Deco Frank Lloyd Wright that we see in the first film. That was incredibly modern for 1959, and we just go to another level in the 1999 version.
Yeah, although because the one in the 99 version looks like it's from like 31, but it's been modernized on the interior
Yeah.
to go from an asylum into a house.
Right.
Yeah, I like the little touches. Like they still have the coffins with the guns, except now they're kind of floating on misty water as he opens up this container. Like, oh, there's your coffins with your Glocks or whatever they are.
Well, and I mean the character here, the Stephen Price character here, he is like that's what he traffics in is thrills and chills. Like he's like the roller coaster king, and he does all these illusions and things like that. So this feeds into the fun of like that's who this character is somebody who he's a William Castle and he's a Vincent Price.
Yeah, and there's a great, not exactly opening, but close to the opening roller coaster scene.
Yes. I'd
That
completely forgotten about it. That was a ton of fun.
it is, and it's got Lisa Loeb as a local news reporter, and then James Marsters from Buffy the Vampire Slayer.
Yeah.
They're both kind of going on this. It's a very Tower of Terror, Twilight Zone kind of a ride where there's an elevator that takes you up to the top of the roller coaster, which is where you board, but the elevator short circuits and starts plummeting. Everyone's gonna die, but it turns out it's all the magic of video screens and not pulleys, but yeah. Whatever they do to make things shake. But they even go a step further in the castle-ness of the Price character.
Yeah.
Because at one point, one of the technicians says, sir, I think we have a problem. Just as the camera cuts to one of the tracks breaking, it shifts up, and you're like, oh, here's where we're gonna jump into Final Destination 3 territory, even though that wouldn't come out for another 10 years. The coaster goes off the tracks, but then the track reconnects, so it catches it and everyone's fine.
Yeah. Well, I think, I mean, it's almost like they send like a fake roller coaster.
Was that what it was? Because I was confused as what I was seeing.
So James Marsters and Lisa Loeb are on a roller coaster, and they see the other roller coaster fly off the track with the dummy in it. And they, of course, think, oh, we're going to suffer a similar fate. And then the track comes back down and they continue on. So it's a great kind of like fake out. And I had forgotten about it completely. And I was like, oh yes, I think this is, not to go off track here, but I think this is the same year that The Haunting remake was also out. The one with Liam Neeson and Catherine Zeta-Jones
and Owen Wilson.
And that one, was also kind of a supercharged version of the 1963 film, which is very much about what's actually happening or not, like not showing us anything. Whereas the 99 version shows us everything. And I feel like the two oftentimes get conflated as to which is the good one, which is the bad one. This one is just out to have a good time.
Yeah.
And I
Yeah,
think the 99 Haunting takes itself a little bit more seriously, perhaps to its own detriment.
yeah, I think this movie is a lot of fun. I think because I'd seen a lot of cheesy movies back in the late '90s, by the time I got to this, I might have been like, "Oh, it's just another one I'm seeing at the AMC."
Yep.
But with some distance, with a bit of castle education, I was able to enjoy it more and appreciate all the kind of meta contextual stuff they were bringing into it, like the castle-ness of the roller coaster showmanship and all that
Yep.
other business. The CGI is very dodgy, but it's one of those situations where it'd be great if someone did a special edition of it and just kind of clean things up, because even though it's got dimensionality in theory, it all looks very flat with it as the spirits come out. But there's just these great moments again between our two antagonists, like when Famke Janssen thinks that she is, or thinks that her husband is dead, and it turns out he was faking, and they end up fighting, and he throws her into the one room that you're not supposed to go into because that's going to free all the spirits, and she's lying there, and he's like, honey, get up. And she's like, why? Because the black spiritual mold is making its way towards her. It's a moment of like genuine concern for
Yeah.
this person that he despises. It's surprising, and it's a nice moment and kind of a tragedy because things don't work out well for her.
No, and I mean, and I also like the other characters. I will say that the other blonde who's running around doing the video recording,
She, I think, was in I Know What You Did Last Summer. I think she
is
played
that
the sister.
because I kept going, is that Ali Larter? Is
No.
which one's like they both look very similar. I'm like, that's Ali Larter. No, that's Ali Larter. So when she finally gets spoiler bumped off, I was like, okay, thank goodness I only have one blonde to keep track of now.
They look so similar that I'm convinced that they gave her the camcorder as the
Just so
gimmick.
they could, yeah, this is the signifying element.
Yeah, she's the blonde with the camcorder, which another great gimmick that I think is a callback to William
Yes.
Castle,
Yeah.
Percepto, which is for, I think I was for 13 Ghosts, where you had a little viewer
That's
and
Illusiono.
or Illusiono. Okay, which was
Yep.
Percepto? What was that?
Percepto is the tingler.
Okay, that's the tingle. Okay, so Illusiono, you've got the little glasses with the red and white, red and blue film, and you look through them at certain points in the movie, and like,
Yep.
okay, you can see the ghost, or if you're too scared, you can look through the blue one and not see the ghost.
Right.
So when her character finds her way into the kind of the autopsy room or the operating room of this asylum, she is looking through her camcorder and she sees Dr. Vandercut and his crew ripping someone apart mercilessly on the table, but then she lowers the camcorder and there's nothing in the room.
Yeah.
It's that wonderful. It's just so
It
much
is a
fun.
ghost viewer. It's literally a ghost viewer. It's very cool.
Yeah. So yeah, there's a lot to recommend here. I was surprised by how I felt rewatching it. I also love the very end of the film where Ali Larter and Taye Diggs make their way out of the house thanks to the ghost of Chris Kattan, who finally makes himself useful in this movie by letting them out. They're relieved to have escaped and to have gotten the checks for $5 million this time because they get everybody's money. But there's this great ADR as the camera is like floating back, and you realize they're on top of this ocean view facing house. I think Ali Lutter says, by the way, how do we get down from here?
Right. Well, and that's just, I'm like, does anybody even know you're there? Probably not. Is anybody going to come looking for you? Probably not.
Well, they did. I haven't seen it, but apparently there was a direct-to-video return to House on Haunted Hill.
Yeah, and I have not seen that one either. So,
but the protagonist of that movie is supposed to be the younger sister of Ali Larter's character, Sarah.
Uh-oh.
And so it would be great if they went back to the house
yeah,
and they open up that window and just see two corpses sitting out there on the ledge.
Or even better, they open the window and they push them off the cliff.
No, that's a gag for Scary Movie 8 or whatever it's going to be.
What did you think of Chris Kattan? Because I'd forgotten that he was Pritchard in this version. And I mean, remember there was a time when Chris Kattan was a thing?
That was the exact phrase that kept running through my head while I was watching this movie. He was great as Mongo on Saturday Night Live, but I never saw Night at the Roxbury. I never got into that whole thing. So watching him in this movie, I don't know. It was an over the top character that was supposed to be the comedy character, the comedy guy who's always getting drunk and the crazy Ralph kind of guy screaming, "We're all gonna die." But I just feel like there needed to be an actor who was playing it at like a 7 and not a 13
Right.
because it was amazing when he did a good thing at the end to save our heroes. Because 'cause I'm like, "Finally, you're useful." I
Mhm.
really wanted him to be off screen whenever he was on.
I'll also say I really enjoyed the droll presence of Peter Gallagher. Always nice when see Peter Gallagher showed up, and I really like him. I think he's really well used here.
What I love is his turn
Yeah.
because he's just the kind of the boring doctor character who's bemused by what's going on. He doesn't quite believe in ghosts, but he also knows that people are disappearing. But when the crew decides that our Mr. Price character needs to be locked away for his own good, they put him in that weird chamber and they lock him in. Everyone goes off, and Peter Gallagher's character is left there to watch him, and he's peering through the window. And Price is like, "Let me out." He's like, "What? I can't hear you. Let me out. You got to help me." He's like, "What? Oh, there's a lever here. What does this do?" And he
Yeah.
turns on the machine, and then you just gradually realize he's messing with him and
Yep.
he's in on it. And it's just, oh, it's so good.
Now, did you also watch this on Hoopla?
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. I saw it there. So I mean, it's available out there on a few different streaming services. But yeah, a ton. I think it's fun. I think it was fun to watch them side by side because I certainly hadn't done that. I think I came around to it, and because I had enough recall of the original, I was able to kind of think about it. But there are some really nice touches, as you mentioned, that are directly acknowledging not just the original, but also just William Castle's output in general.
Yeah. Now I got to ask you, because we'll be talking about 13 Ghosts in a few months. I haven't seen it, so just tell me, AC. Spoiler alert.
Yes.
Are there actual ghosts in this one?
There are 13 ghosts.
Okay, good. Okay.
And there are ghosts.
It's not just some kind of like a weird insurance
Nope.
scam and
No,
okay.
no.
All right.
There's actual ghosts in 13 Ghosts. Now, are we planning to also revisit the 13 Ghosts remake as put
Yes.
out by Dark Castle? Okay. Because I've only seen that once and I have no memory of it at all.
I don't think I've ever seen it. I think that's one that I skipped. So it'll be a first time for on both counts. But that's coming up in I think June because in April, this is the end of February, we're doing every other month for Castle Freaks. We're going to be talking about the Tingler.
Yep.
I'm going to see if I can find out if the music box is showing it, around that time, so we could maybe go and make an event.
I think
of it.
they are planning to do some castle this year. I know they did I think they did House on Haunted Hill last year.
Well, if I'm going to see if I can find out when that's going to happen because we might have to do some shuffling around depending on when that takes place. But we will be back talking about more William Castle in April. I'm excited to continue this series. We're just getting started, folks. Again, check out William Castle's works. Check out Spine-Tingler, the William Castle story. You can find it a lot of places, for free to stream. Also, pick up Step Right Up. When I told you, AC, that I was going to be reading this book, you said it's full of amazing stories and most of them aren't true or something like that. Did you mean that? Because I'm reading it and I don't detect any BS. What makes you think he wasn't friends with Cary Grant and Orson Welles?
I'm saying that William Castle had a propensity for telling a great story and not letting the truth get in the way. So you're right. It makes for a great story. So why not take it as read? But as you get deeper into it, and you get to his Rosemary's Baby, like the ballyhoo around that, again, he was all about the showmanship. And so I'm not saying things were exaggerated or untrue because I wasn't there, but there are certainly people who have said that actually isn't how it went down.
Well, I want to believe.
There you go.
I'm an X-Files fan. I want to believe. Yep. So, folks, if you want to read a great story, true or not, about kind of old Hollywood and the birth of the B movie and his place in it, definitely check out Step Right Up. But AC, of Horror 101 with Dr. AC. I feel like I forgot to introduce you properly.
That's all right.
What do you have going on, sir? What can you plug?
Well, actually, I mean, for those who are eager to hear more about William Castle, we did a double feature on my show last year of House on Haunted Hill and The Tingler. So you can go scout around for that. This being 2026, we are revisiting movies that end, or sorry, movies from years that end in ones and sixes. So we just recently did Silence of the Lambs. We're going to be talking about Let's Scare Jessica to Death. We're going to be covering a female vampires of 1971. So that's going to be a really epic episode. But yeah, we're going to be talking about the Dracula from 1931, Frankenstein from 1931, the Wolfman from 1941. So it's going to be a really great year of revisiting some classics and giving them the love.
Awesome. All right, definitely check out AC's work. I'll have links down below. And you said that you reviewed the Blu-ray for this.
Yep.
You did a write-up for.
I will send you the link to that as well. Yep.
All right, cool. Well, thanks, AC, for continuing this journey. I know it's been forever since you've been home, since you've been able to check your mail or check in with family, because I had you on this crazy road trip. We're just going to Hammerland, and then 5 years later, we get out, and now we're stuck at this godforsaken castle.
Oh, I don't know that it's godforsaken at all. I love this castle.
Well, I'm glad you do. I do. I love it too, kind of. But I am a little homesick. Anyhow, folks out there, if you like this show, please like, subscribe, and all that business. Join us back here. Oh, yeah, keep up the love for Vincent Price, the master. And yeah, join us back here in April for another edition of Castle Freaks. And until next time, whenever that is, whatever that is, thank you very much and take care. Hey everyone, Ian here. I know, long time no see. But if you like the video you just watched, feel free to subscribe to Kicking the Seat right here, and also check out the playlist and recommended video right here. Thanks for watching.